The coronavirus crisis has brought serious distress to local economies and advertising along with them. The New York Amsterdam News has partnered with the local media association during this unprecedented crisis. Help us continue our important work of chronicling the life of blacks in New York and consider making a donation to the COVID-19 Local News Fund. Go to givebutter.com/Amsterdam News to donate. It's Monday, April 20th, and welcome to the New York Amsterdam News Podcast. I'm Cyril Josh Barker. We continue our coverage of the COVID-19 outbreak with my guest, Sheena Wright, who is president and CEO of the United Way of New York City. She's going to be speaking with me about how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting low-income New Yorkers. My guest today is Sheena Wright, who is president and CEO of the United Way of New York City. She's been head of the organization since 2012. The United Way recently launched its COVID-19 Community Fund to support New Yorkers in dire need of crucial resources such as food and tools for virtual learning. Welcome to the podcast, Sheena. How are you?
I am hanging in there, Josh.
I think we all are with everything that's been going on. Well, first, just tell me your thoughts on how the coronavirus is impacting the black community. I do want to talk about the United Way and what the organization is doing, but tell me your thoughts as one of our black community leaders here in New York City about how this is impacting our community.
It is absolutely devastating on all levels. We are being disproportionately impacted in terms of how we're contracting the virus, dying from the virus. Economically, we're disproportionately impacted in terms of the effect on our individual households and communities. And it is, certainly the direct result of systemic inequities that have plagued this country and certainly this city since the beginning. I think a couple statistics just to share that almost 70% of all job losses as a result of COVID-19 are people of color.
Oh, wow.
The people on the front line, 41% of public transit people are black, and they have the highest incidence of death of any municipal service. So these are just devastating. Before coronavirus, only 2% of small businesses in New York City were black owned. We are facing an extinction level event. So it's pretty significant.
Yeah, and those are some staggering numbers when it comes to, I didn't know that about about the numbers of transit folks and the job loss numbers. That's pretty interesting. I definitely have to talk to you about what the United Way of New York City has been doing. One thing in particular is the COVID-19 Community Fund. First, tell me about some of the things that United Way is doing, and then you can tell me about the COVID-19 Community Fund, please.
Sure. United Way, before COVID hit, our focus, our North Star, was really helping low-income New Yorkers get to self-sufficiency, and that means that they have enough money to make ends meet. They have enough money to pay for housing, food, childcare, all the basic essentials. Before COVID-19, 40% of households did not meet that self-sufficiency standard, 40%. And now, the numbers are kind of through the roof. They're estimating that unemployment is going to be about 30%. And we know disproportionately our communities have been impacted there. So
Absolutely.
Our COVID fund is focused on survival, sustainability, and then, ultimately to get back to economic mobility and success. We have been making sure that food insecurity is addressed. That's one of the first things that go when people just don't have enough money to make ends meet.
Right.
They don't buy food. They don't eat. And so childhood hunger has just gone off the charts. So our fund is feeding people. We have a network of 400 food pantries and soup kitchens all over this city. We're making sure that food is on the shelves. We're making sure that those pantries have protective personal equipment so that they can be of service. 30% of pantries have had to close because they don't have volunteers. They don't have PPE. They're staffed by seniors in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to work with the ones that are open, who have increased demand, as well as work with trying to get other ones opened up. Our fund is also supplying needed educational resources to children who have just been denied educational opportunities.
Okay.
They don't have books at home. Almost 70% of low-income families before Corona did not have books at home.
Wow.
Because they couldn't pay rent and food. Books were a luxury. Getting educational books at home, getting technology at home. So we're buying laptops, we're getting educational resources in people's homes. Those are some of the key core functions right now of the fund.
Okay. I just want to read some numbers that you sent to me last week rather, because of the story that we did, our main story in this week's paper that, came out on Thursday, was about education and how a large number of students don't have the necessary technology, the necessary tools, even the necessary internet to be able to continue forward with their education. And these numbers were based on a survey from the New York Equity Trust. And you said that parents reported that they were very concerned about their child falling behind, including 71% of parents who are low income, 72% of black parents, and 66% of parents in districts classified by the state as high need. Tell us about the plight that a lot of our students are facing during this remote learning era. I mean, I started the story that we did last week with, Carranza said we're going to continue learning, but for a lot of students, the learning hasn't really started. Share your thoughts on that and how the United Way is helping out with this.
It absolutely hasn't started. And to be frank, even before Corona, wasn't happening at an equitable level. We have hundreds of schools across the city that were systemically underfunded for years and years. And these are schools that have some of the highest need children and families. So there wasn't even enough money to begin with to make sure that those children had equal access to opportunity. And now they're being completely left behind. In order to get one of the devices, you already had to have an account with the DOE and had already set up kind of an email address, et cetera. And for 700,000 kids that didn't have access, the DOE bought 300,000 laptops initially. So that's a big gap right there.
Yeah, that's huge.
And so, parents are struggling. Again, they don't have food for their children, and also kind of realizing that their educational opportunities are just being decimated. So we've got to do more. We've got to move faster, and we cannot sacrifice summer learning. That is going to be a key pivotal opportunity. Not only normally summer learning is like you're trying to just prevent the slide, like
right,
all that
exactly.
they learn throughout the school year, they start to slide back. This is going to be like a beachhead. Like this is going to be critical and essential to make up for what was significantly lost throughout the school year, in addition to building up the capacities over the critical time that we have over the summer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the things I wanted to talk about with the COVID-19 fund is that you guys are going to be, United Way is going to be providing family financial relief coaching and monetary assistance to cover lost wages to meet rent and other needs. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of people, one of the things about COVID-19 that I think is so horrible is that, for a lot of families, it's one problem after another, unfortunately. You might have lost your job. You might have a person who's sick. You might be sick on top of having children at home that need to be educated. It's just a whole myriad of things that are going on with this one epidemic that's hurting the world. But tell us about the family financial relief coaching and the assistance.
Certainly, and we're working, through a network of community-based organizations that are meeting the need. So there are many community-based organizations, again, before COVID, that were working with low-income families, helping them get access to SNAP benefits, or, if they were facing eviction, helping them prevent eviction. We had, before COVID, an eviction prevention fund where we would help people pay rent, mortgage, and utilities to prevent eviction. We are expanding the resources available to those families. Although there is a deferral of rent right now, it's not erasing your liability. So once that deferral is up, you still have to pay, what you owe. And obviously, many families are not working, have lost their jobs, as you said, are recovering from COVID-19. We have one family that we heard about who, had two school-aged kids, got COVID, was in the hospital, gets home from the hospital. She's alone in her home, has to manage her children,
Right.
feed them, as well as herself, and has no income. So through the fund, we were able to get her resources to get food, to help her pay her bills, and also to get her help with social work support so that she can manage as she's recovering from, a significant illness. So that is definitely part of the fund. I'm also happy to say that we're partnering with BET, and BET is launching an initiative on this Wednesday,
Okay.
which is really focused on the Black community.
Yes.
And it's called Saving Ourselves. And
Okay.
United Way is the partner, not only in New York City, but in Chicago and New Orleans and other communities. And its primary focus is helping Black families in particular get financial stability and survival in this crucial time.
Okay, and that's wonderful. That I did hear about that program that BET is doing, and they're doing quite a bit. With the numbers of COVID-19 being so high in the Black community, what do you believe is the main factor here as to why it's happening? Because a lot of people say, oh, because a lot of us have the health issues. A lot of Black folks are non-essential workers. A lot of Black folks, it's not blame, although it kind of is. It's kind of like blaming us for having our own problems. But what do you think is the culprit here when it comes to the Black community? And mind you, a lot of our communities are just now getting the testing. I was talking with a politician yesterday, and he said that, we're now getting the testing, which is crucial right now to get the numbers down, to get the plateau going so we can, start getting back to some type of normalcy. And it took us weeks and weeks for us to be able to get testing in our Black communities. But what do you think is the problem here?
Well, I think it's manyfold, but again, I think the root of all of it is the systemic inequity that our community has faced. So even when you talk about health disparities, what is that the result of? Why do more Black people and more people of color have asthma?
Right.
Because our communities have been dumping grounds for bus depots and other environmental racism. That's why we have more disparities. Why does our community have more health disparities? Because we have had, food deserts, and we don't have access to healthy, affordable food. So that's one of the reasons that we have high incidences of obesity, of high blood pressure, hypertension. Those are some of the key and core reasons that we've had these challenges. I talked about that statistic about public transit. We were not giving PPE to our frontline municipal workers in the numbers that were needed and necessary. Testing wasn't available. So we had many people who didn't know they were carriers and were infecting other people who are at risk because we didn't have testing widely available in our neighborhoods and communities. We know that the tests were available for people who had more, if you had more money, you had more access to testing. So all of those factors compound and result in our higher incidences of challenge.
Interesting. All right. Obviously about the stimulus check is coming for a lot of people. It's coming for a lot of families. One of the things that I discussed recently with a politician was that our community, a lot of folks in our community are unbanked, meaning they don't have a bank account, they don't have a system to where they can get their money easily, or they take it to a check cashing place. What do you think should be done here about that? And what are your thoughts on the stimulus package? Because for a lot of people, this money is going to go to, it's to stimulate the economy. But for some people, it's going to go straight to rent. It's going to go to survival. It's not going to go to a trip or something fun or something, entertaining. It's going to go for survival. But what are your thoughts on the stimulus checks that are coming, rather, I should say?
Well, I think they're essential and critical. And I think we're, unfortunately going to need more resources in the coming days. I do think the fact that there's a tax on lower income people who are unbanked,
Absolutely.
so that they're not going to be able to use the full amount of their checks, but they're going to have to pay very, very high fees to even access this resource.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that we are not giving resources to hardworking New Yorkers who are immigrants and might be undocumented is a real challenge as well, as those families are going to face a significant challenge in the days and weeks ahead. And it underscores some of the real challenges that low-income New Yorkers and low-income people around the country face that need to be fixed. I do think, though, that there's an opportunity in the crisis. And how do we create new financial institutions that are meeting the needs of this community? How do we look at fintech and some technologies that we can use more broadly across these communities to give people more access to capital? I think hopefully that's something that will come out of this, and some of it hopefully will be Black-owned businesses that are doing it.
Absolutely. All right. And lastly, I just want to know what is coming up for the United Way. What's the best way folks can get in contact with you and support you as well, because you are a nonprofit organization that is in need, like many others. What's the best way that folks can get with you guys, and what's coming up for you?
Absolutely. Going to our website, uwnyc.org, is the best place to get information about what we're doing and what you can do. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook to get regular updates. What we're doing is really sharing information that's useful for the community across to the United Way of New York City COVID-19 Fund. You can do that, as well as if you are an organization that is seeking funding to support the community, you can find an application on our website. We also need people to advocate. There are many federal policies that are coming fast and furious where our voices need to be heard. So you can also go online to the agenda, how you can call your legislators and make sure that they hear your voice in all of the decisions that are being made that are going to impact our community.
All right. Well, listen, Sheena, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I really appreciate your help. Again, can you give the website one more time?
Sure. It's uwnyc.org. United Way, New York City.org.
All right. Well, listen, thank you again, Sheena, so much, and we're going to definitely talk again soon. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That concludes this week's podcast. You can pick up the latest edition of the New York Amsterdam News on newsstands and get updates online at amsterdamnews.com. You can also keep up with us on Facebook at NY Amsterdam News and follow us on Twitter at NYAmNews. I'm Cyril Josh Barker. Thanks for listening. The coronavirus crisis has brought serious distress to local economies and advertising along with them. The New York Amsterdam News has partnered with the local media association during this unprecedented crisis. Help us continue our important work of chronicling the life of Blacks in New York and consider making a donation to the COVID-19 Local News Fund. Go to givebutter.com/Amsterdam News to donate.